Welcome to the Inner Priestess podcast, helping empathic and intuitive women trust, recognize, and embody the priestess within. I'm Elizabeth, also known as She Who Walks with Women, and here's today's reminder that your intuition is real, the earth is sacred, and you're more powerful than you can imagine. One of the main tripping hazards we come across on the path to understanding our energetic abilities is trying to figure out exactly which term to use to describe ourselves. We want something tangible to help us wrap our brains around our experience, and we feel like if we can figure out what or who we are, we'll have a better understanding of how to develop our gifts. Because we lack the tradition of being initiated into our gifts, this labeling process is a natural progression in our journey, for our mind to try to sort everything into a nicely labeled box to understand it. This is how our minds make sense of the world. But it does lead to some confusion. It leads us to feel like we don't check all the boxes to be intuitive, so maybe we're not. And when we do place our label on ourselves, it narrows our perception of our abilities, and it almost colors our experiences through someone else's lens. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but I want to start by discussing some of the most common terms, intuitive versus empath. Let's start with empath. I actually love this definition of empath. A person with extrasensory empathic ability, capable of sensing the emotions of others around them in a way unexplained by conventional science and psychology. Essentially, this is a sixth sense for knowing what someone else is feeling on a deep level. You can feel their emotions, you can put yourself in their shoes, and at times you take on those emotions as your own. The term empath is really concerned with emotions and using your ability to deeply feel another's emotions to understand their experience in a profound way that the average person can't. There's a debate going on now about whether or not you are born with this ability or whether you develop it through trauma. But this debate is actually moot. It doesn't invalidate your ability either way, and I'm going to explain why in just a minute. But being an empath can be extremely difficult without the proper initiation into your gifts. Whether this ability appears during childhood or later on, it's easy to get lost in the world of other people's emotions. You're bombarded with what everyone else is feeling, the good, the bad, the ugly, and it becomes almost impossible without guidance to know what's yours and what's theirs. It's a very ungrounded, confusing, and frustrating feeling. And to make matters worse, there's so much bad information on social media. I was lucky in a way to have my energetic reawakening before social media became a thing, so I was forced to find reputable sources and teachers. But now we have so much information thrown at us all the time, and it's usually poorly researched information. Information that says you're an empath if you check all these boxes, but someone just threw a bunch of stuff together so they have content to share. Our minds love this type of content because we can decide if we fit into a nice box or not. My least favorite meme that tells empaths that it's your responsibility to transmute negativity. If you ever hear or see someone say this, run the other way. This is the worst advice someone could possibly give you. I don't know who started it, but I'm passionately against it. Understanding your empathic abilities can be extremely difficult, draining, and confusing. I'm going to shed some light on how to manage it in a moment, but let's talk about the term intuitive first. Intuitive is a term used to describe someone who knows things without any logical reason for how they know. Keep in mind that this is an extremely broad term, and there are countless ways that intuition will show up in your life. Each way is as unique as the individual who experiences it. Think about a time when you knew something, but there wasn't really any explanation for how you knew. These usually feel like coincidences, and in the beginning we tend to write them off as such. So maybe someone pops into your head, and then a moment later they call you. Maybe you got a feeling in your gut that you should stay home, but you went out anyway and got into a fight with your friend. Maybe you have the urge to buy an extra onion at the store one day, and the next day your sister asks if you have any extra. So you can see how there are endless possibilities for how intuition might show up in your life, and how it's an extremely broad term. The struggles we face with intuition are a little different than the struggles we have with being an empath. We're less overwhelmed, confused, and drained emotionally, but we can't seem to stop doubting that our intuition is real. We tell ourselves again and again that it's a coincidence, There's no way this can be true. There's no way I can know this. We struggle to get clearer information from our intuition, and we are faced with all sorts of gaslighting, shunning, and repression when we share our experiences with the average person. So the term empath is used specifically to describe your ability to sense the emotions of someone else, while intuitive is a broad term to describe knowing things that there's no logical way for you to know. If you were to look at these abilities as a pyramid, you could argue that being empathic actually falls under the umbrella of intuitive, but I want you to think about these both in a bigger context. Limiting ourselves to these labels can be helpful in the beginning of our journey because it helps us to realize that there's truth to our experience. We're not completely alone, we're not crazy, and we're not average. But the fact that you're listening to this right now tells me that you're ready to progress in your development. And in order to do that, you have to let go of the need to define yourself as empath, intuitive, or really any other label. And you have to accept the core truth, the root cause of all these abilities that you're discovering. And that is simply that you're sensitive to energy. This is something that the average person hasn't developed for various reasons that we won't get into now. But you have the precious and invaluable gift of being able to sense the energetic realm. When you're feeling someone else's emotions, you're actually feeling their energetic vibration, and you've evolved and developed the skill to interpret that vibration and experience within your body. When you know something without any logical reason why, it's because you're sensing and then interpreting the energy of a situation. Everything is energy. This statement gets tossed around a lot without context, but think about it as everything being a vibration of light. All we are is light vibrating at various frequencies. When someone's emotions change, the frequency or the speed that they're vibrating at changes, and you can sense that. And through experience, you know what that vibration means emotionally. So I want you to start reframing your intuition, your empathic abilities, and all these other little coincidences you seem to have as energetic sensitivity. You don't need to limit yourself by boxing yourself into a label, a term, a definition. I want you to start seeing the magnitude of your potential. Because when you stop trying to fit into someone else's definition and stop trying to follow someone else's path, your ability to develop your gifts will expand and exponentially. A good teacher will always bring you back to these core truths and show you that the way to understanding and harnessing your unique power is to develop your ability to become aware of the energetic messages and to refine your understanding of how you interpret those messages. We each interpret messages in our own way, so becoming aware that you're sensing these and then understanding how that you interpret them is the key to developing your gifts. As I close today's episode, I want to leave you with one message. Let go of the need to define your sensitivity by anyone else's standards and begin to notice the unique ways that you are receiving and interpreting your energetic messages. As always, your intuition is real, the earth is sacred, and you're far more powerful than you can imagine.